remember that in order for us to effectively communicate, we need to have one person speaking at a time. Thank you guys for being here. Hope you're enjoying the continental breakfast this morning. My name is Lydia Hudson, and I have the honor of serving.
Where's the meat?
Continental breakfast. Christine has not been here all weekend, and then she want to come in and start problems.
That's a good question.
I have the bully night. We want to make sure that if there's anything that you do need other than some meat or food, because we gave you what you're getting for this event, that you let us know. We thank you guys for being here this morning. We know it was an early time, but we have to do business. We have fun at night, get up early in the morning and get back to work. And I'm excited about this panel because everyone hears about how Black women are doing it in the political world. This seat at the table is going to let you know what's really going on and how far we still have to go. Yes, we've made some strides, but we're not there yet. We're never going to be there yet because we always want to move forward. We always want to do better. So I am going to turn over the microphone and sit down and learn from some dynamic women. The facilitator for today, and we're very honored to have her, is the senior advisor for Tom Perez, the DNC chair with Kenya Clanton. So I'm going to allow her to go ahead and greet you all. And just let's be respectful and keep any conversation to the minimum, because it sounds as though we're getting echoes in here when we talk. Maybe it's the way the room is set up. It's a beautiful room though, isn't it? Yeah. Notice that we have the blinds so that you're not sitting there staring out the window onto the water. We want you to pay attention to these wonderful women. So here we go.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And I think Grace Carrington, she was here last night. I don't think she's made it in this morning. But I want to bring you greetings on behalf of DNC Chairman Tom Perez. I am with Kenya Clanton. I serve as senior advisor to the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and it is an honor to be in the Sunshine State, which is why I wear my beautiful yellow. I knew that they were going to have this room protected from the outside view, so I decided to bring the sun in with me. So this morning, I'm extremely excited to be joined by these dynamic women who are going to talk to you all a little bit about what it means to have a seat at the table and how right here in the state of Florida, we can really take this purplish state blue. That is the primary goal. And so one thing I want to say is, good morning, Florida.
Good morning.
Very good, very good. I am normally very bubbly and high energy, and so I'm going to bring that with me, and I ask you to join with me in that. So before I get started, I want to take an opportunity to allow my panelists to actually introduce themselves. These women have been doing dynamic work throughout the course of their careers, and I think it's fitting to let them speak for themselves. I mean, I could get up here and read their bios, but I wouldn't do them justice. So I'm going to actually start with Jordan. Jordan, you want to kick us off?
Sure will. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jordan Pride. And I'm the president of Hillsborough County Democratic Black Caucus, so we welcome you. A little bit about myself. I'm 24 years old, a Florida native, originally from Daytona Beach, hell Wildcats. And I came to Tampa to actually attend college. I went to the University of South Florida, go Bulls, where I graduated in 2016 with my bachelor's in political science. I've been involved in politics since before I could vote. Out of 12 elections, I've been participated, in national to local offices. Most recently, in 2018 midterm election, I was the state's data manager for Next Gen America, a nonprofit. And then most recently as well in March, I was a campaign manager for Nicholas Glover. He was just in the room, I was gonna shout him out. But yes, moving forward a little bit to now, I am now the co-owner and partner of Parsons Wilson's campaign consulting firm. And yeah, my role here is just to create more spaces for people that look like me. That's my goal, and any way that I can do that, that's the goal.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Katarina Taylor. I'm the president and CEO of the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, where I'm out of Atlanta, so I'm excited to be here in Florida and have some sunshine. And y'all have way less traffic than we do. I run the chamber in the 4th largest county in the state of Georgia. It is 80% black. And so we are a fully Democratic county. However, most of the time politics and business are not always in our favor. So I really want to talk about today how to ensure that as business owners and entrepreneurs, or even if you're not, how to engage so that we can engage more in the political process and also influence political outcomes as far as legislation and things like that. So I'm so excited and proud to be here and look forward to the panel and the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Chloe Coney, a woman that wears many hats. True story. I'm homegrown from Tampa here, graduating from Hillsborough High School, and I helped integrate the school system here in Tampa. And then I left and went to FAMU, and it rattles in the house. Okay, let's go. And then right out of college, Department of Correction, Probation Parole hired me in 1972. So being the first black female probation officer, I'm used to sitting to the table. Many times we sat to the table and we're the only ones there. After I left there, went on the Florida Power, then came back home to Lee Davis Neighborhood Service Center, and out of that birthed forth a community development corporation. The CDC of Tampa doing economic development, building houses, getting people jobs, sending kids to college, and eliminating poverty. And then the last 10 years, I was the district director for Congresswoman Kathy Castor right here, District 14. I retired 2 years ago. I cannot stay home, y'all. I can't keep a job, but I can't stay home, all right? And now I am working with FDOT, doing workforce development, because y'all know this is a $9 billion project. So we need to bring some jobs and get them to hire locally. So that's what I do. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Fentress Driscoll, and I'm the state representative for Florida House District 63. Newly elected in November, it covers parts of North Tampa and North Hillsborough County. So Carrollwood, Lutz, University of South Florida, go Bulls, New Tampa, and all of its surrounding neighborhoods. It is a delight for me to be here with you and to be on this panel, and I get to sit next to one of my mentors, a woman who I've looked up to for years before we'd ever even met. And so it really is a pleasure for me to be here and talk to you about women supporting women and how we can be more engaged in the process. Just to tell you a little bit about my background, I grew up in nearby Polk County, so I like to say that I'm fairly local. We count as Tampa Bay, whether y'all want to claim us or not. We're going to claim y'all. But a product of public schools. My mom taught public schools for 35 years. My dad worked for Publix, literally slinging boxes in the warehouse or whatever he had to do to provide for his family. But they did provide for their family. So with that public school education, I was able to go to Harvard. I became the first black woman to be president of the student government there. I'm still very proud of it. Thank you. Went off to Georgetown for law school, but right after law school, moved back home because I wanted to find ways to give back to the community that gave so much to me, because I know I stand on broad shoulders and strong shoulders, and we have an obligation to pay it back and to pay it forward. I'm an attorney here in town with Carlton Fields. I've been very active in the community, but just felt like there was a need for more women and more, particularly black folk, in the political process, and decided to run. And I'm so glad that I get to serve this community in the legislature every day. Look forward to speaking with you all.
I told y'all I couldn't do them justice. So let me just start by kind of setting the table a little bit. So Seat at the Table is the DNC, is an initiative actually of the DNC Black Caucus and the DNC Women's Caucus to make sure that we are properly engaging and organizing with black women across the country. So last year we went on a tour with our chairman to about 40 different cities, 20 different cities and did over 40 different events with more than 3,000 Black women across this country. So that kind of set the tone for this year's engagement where we're looking to talk to Black women more about some of the issues that are most important to them, but then also how we're using the knowledge and the interest around the issue to help mobilize folks who are going to represent us throughout our communities. So that's kind of how we're setting the table today. So today's conversation will focus a little bit on how we leverage our various positions to ensure that we are getting to the goal in November, not just focusing on 2020 elections, but also 2019 elections. Every election for us is important because it's important to make sure that we have proper infrastructure at each level of government. So I'm going to actually open this conversation by starting with you, Representative Driscoll, around what does it mean to you to have a seat at the table?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So having a seat at the table, let me tell you about some of the tables that I sit around in Tallahassee in our legislature. On these committees, and I serve on insurance and banking, energy and utilities, transportation and infrastructure, and the judiciary committee. And I look around at these committee meetings, and there are times where I'm convinced that our state is run by good old boys. And they may be good-hearted, and they may be fine people and kind people, but you know, it is important to have a seat at those tables so that I can bring a diverse perspective, not just from my community and what our district needs, but in terms of what my life experience has been and perhaps seeing things through a different lens. So it's important to have a seat at the table, but then it's also important to make room at the table and try to bring more folk back with you. That's why in this off season, I'm really focused heavily on candidate recruitment and trying to raise as much money as possible so that we can take more Democrats with us, back. But it matters on legislation. For example, one last thing I'll mention, is we had a bill that we heard, it was one of the worst bills this session, where they are expanding the Guardian program in the public schools or in all schools to allow arming teachers. That was a provision that was heavily negotiated last session before last, and they left it out because it would not allow that, the Parkland bill to pass in a bipartisan way, so they left it out. But then they resurrected it this session. And one of our colleagues, Shevrin Jones out of Orlando or Miami, wanted to include an amendment that would require implicit bias training for these teachers who are going to be armed around our Black and brown babies. And the conversation got very heated. Now, in my profession as a lawyer, I speak a lot about implicit bias and diversity and inclusion. So I stood up and gave a speech on the floor of the House and tried to educate people on what implicit bias meant. And I was very glad to be there and glad to be able to, have that opportunity at the table to try to instruct them. And we actually did peel off some Republicans to vote favorably on that amendment. Ultimately, it didn't pass, but it mattered to be there and to be present and try to move that agenda forward.
And I think that's a good point to talk about, how when we are in these spaces, it's so important to bring our authentic selves to the work, but then also don't shy away from the challenging part of that work, which is standing firm on things that you know, and also taking time to educate people, because we often make assumptions that everyone knows what we know, and they share the same experiences we share, but in reality, that's not the case. So I really want to applaud you for doing that.
But to that point, as I was listening to the debate, I started to pick up on it. These folks had no idea what the concept of implicit bias meant. They heard the term implicit bias and assumed, oh, I'm a racist, oh, I'm a sexist, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. It's like, no, calm down. Everybody has implicit bias. It's what's in our subconscious. How do we bring that to the forefront and then de-bias and engage in better behaviors and be more inclusive? So it was interesting.
Okay.
I guess with the many years of experience, I like to start out with probation and parole and being the first Black female. I am so glad that we had mentors. It's so critical that we give back to the next generation and to truly be there. I had Judge Edgecombe. I had Delano Stewart. They took this little Black girl when a gun was pointed to my head, going out in Ruskin, thinking that my supervisor was my boyfriend. Come on now. This just happened in 1972. So I'm glad that the Lord allowed me to finish my 5 years there and made sure they supported and hired another Black female. That was sad they had to do that when I walked out the door, okay? But at least they did it. She looked just like me, light complexion, red hair. But anyway, they hired her. But again, something that Congresswoman Corey Brown used to say all the time, if you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu. And I tell people that all the time. Working with Congresswoman Castor, we did the affordable health care. And right here in Tampa, we made national news with CNN when they bust people in and they were trying to stop the whole rally. And you see right now how we have gone backwards with your Governor Rick Scott and him not doing, expanding Medicare, with Medicaid we're worried about. And now that he is in Washington, D.C., your president has made him as the point person for affordable care. Even though he stole $9 billion, not stole, but had to put it back. I don't know if I'm being political correct, but y'all done gave me the mic and I'm just full.
Just make it plain, just make it plain.
Because the fight is for real. And the thing that really hit me this morning, I heard on TV where one of the congresswomen, I think she's in Alabama, is fighting for funding for African American women pregnant because she says it's more African American women that are dying having babies. So when I say this to you, it's raw because those 10 years I was with Kathy, we had to fight for health care. So the fight is still on. So why do we need to sit to the table, as Representative Driscoll said? If we're not there to be the conscience, I want you to hear that. We are the conscience. When they look at us and we speak, come on y'all, we bring in a whole generation of people with us. So if God allowed you to sit to the table, you have a responsibility, especially to the next generation. So health care, especially with women, is one of the things I would like to make sure we continue to put on the table. Thank you.
So Katrina, in your business, we're talking about entrepreneurs, small business, entities, corporations. Could you talk a little bit about your work at the Chamber and how you're using your space there in DeKalb County to make sure that the proper opportunities for people of color, but more specifically Black people, since the county is overwhelmingly Black, have a proper seat at the table?
Yes, absolutely, thank you. So yes, the county is 80% Black, like I said before. However, the county is very valuable. We have lots of companies here that are headquartered there. We have lots of valuable land. If you all are familiar with Congressman John Lewis, he's also a representative, a congressman in our state, in our county, as well as Congresswoman Lucy McBath. And so, as far as what the Chamber does is we want to make sure that there are opportunities for minority-owned and women-owned businesses to go after GDOT dollars and FDOT dollars. But what I found in the state of Georgia, while we have over $1 billion plus in contracts, out of that $1 billion, or over $1 billion, only $2 million have gone to minority contractors, African American. That is less than 0.5%. And so part of the job that I'm doing around the Chamber of Commerce is advocating to our governor, as well as our local counties, that we have to ensure a percentage of the dollars that we're spending, of our tax dollars, is going to small businesses, is going to women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. Now, what happens after those dollars get allocated to those businesses, what can they do? They can influence more campaign dollars going to the people that we want to see get elected. They can be engaged in the political process, not just by voting, but by helping to fund those candidates and those platforms that mean the most to our communities. So as far as making sure that businesses get the due dollars that they deserve, we've got to create legislation around that. Most of the time, well, I'll say this, out of 159 counties in the state of Georgia, there are only 4 Black women presidents. And I think there's maybe 2 Black women presidents out of the 159 counties. Our county's been around for 80 years. I am the first woman president of that chamber. So it's so important for us to understand the conversations that are being had about us, because they're being had about us, but they don't include us.
About us without us.
About us without us. And so understanding that if there's a chamber in your county or in your city, you have got to be at the table. You have to understand the legislation that's being proposed, what can you do about it, how we are advocating to our elected officials, and then obviously, I want to make sure that some of the federal dollars are also being put into our county. So, for example, I had a chance to speak with Congresswoman McBath on yesterday about appropriations for CDFIs. Making sure that more CDFIs, are you all
Can
familiar
you
with
actually
CDFIs?
explain that for the group? Yeah.
So community development financial institutions. So those dollars usually go for entrepreneurs, housing, workforce development opportunities. But if you're a small business and you don't have the credit or the capital, because let's be honest, oftentimes in small businesses we don't have either. So with CDFIs, they will consider all of that and still fund your business up to $35,000. And oftentimes we need that leg up to level set us competing for the state contracts. Oftentimes, even if there is dollars, we can't compete for those state contracts. So we've got to find legislation, fund legislation that supports entrepreneurship. Now, it also would help us close the wage gap. We understand that the jobs are not coming to us. So if we are creating our own workforce opportunities, we can begin to close the wage gap as well. So thank you.
All right. Jordan, I do have the next question, but I'll say this in the next round. Jordan, can you talk a little bit about your role as president of the Hillsborough County, Florida Democratic Black Caucus, all of the things? Could you just share about like your vision for that group and how you're using your role as president of the County Black Caucus to really help inform that?
So some of the goals that I had as incoming president that I ran in my candidacy was engaging 18 to 35 age range millennials, which I'm a millennial as well, and we are the largest voting bloc in America right now. And just to be straight up, we're the ones that's going to inhabit the consequences in the future of this state, this county, and this nation. So it's really important for us to be civically engaged in the process, being that the decisions will be made with or without us. That's one of my goals. Increasing the civic engagement in the community as well. There are so many of our constituents that don't know who their representatives are, what their school board member actually does, what their county commissioner does for them, even city council. So I think it's really important for folks to know who these people are, what they do, and how they can help you. Because otherwise, there's an issue. And that's where a lot of disengagement, I believe, really comes from. Not having that accessibility to really engage and get that knowledge they need as far as the civic engagement process goes. So that's two of my biggest goals. And of course, increasing our membership as a whole. One of the points I made in my speech was that in the past 2018 midterm election, there's about 88,000 African Americans that got out to vote in Hillsborough County. While this was astronomically better than 2014 midterm election, there's 133,000 registered African Americans in Hillsborough County. And if we crunch those numbers, I'm a numbers person, if 90% of us would have turned out, we would have had Andrew Gillum as our governor right now. So understanding where we are and where we need to go is extremely important to me.
You bring up a good point, because that's something that we've even been talking about at the national level, like the extreme gap that we have here. Well, I won't even call it a gap, I would call it an opportunity that we have here, particularly in the state of Florida, to re-engage voters, but also to recruit and retain new voters. So I think when we were looking at some of the stats, when we looked at the Hispanic community, there were over 3 million eligible voters within that community who did not vote because they were not registered to vote. Now that for me is extremely alarming. You know, similar to you, I'm a numbers girl, but I also like to understand strategy and like how the other side has been working like for years, right? Building this, infiltrating on these levels, particularly amongst that community. How can the folks in this room, because I want to use this as an opportunity to engage the folks around the tables in the room, how can the folks in this room actually like strategize and penetrate those markets? Like we have a huge opportunity. We're now in June, fastly approaching July, so that means we have roughly 5 more months before we head into 2020. how can we use these next 5 months to close that registration gap and that opportunity gap around engaging those voters? So not just registering them, because it's not enough. It is not enough to just register a voter. I want to be very clear about that. You have to engage that voter. So one of the things I want to challenge the folks in the room to do is think about, once you do a voter registration, what other means of contact are you having with that voter? Like, are you then inviting them to, a community meeting? Are you then inviting them to volunteer? Like, how else are you looking to engage with that person outside of getting them to sign up? Because that will be an opportunity. You saw it happen just a couple of months ago here, where folks were being purged from voting rolls. They weren't showing up, thinking that they're registered, they're not registered. But you know why they didn't know to check their registration? Because no one had did an additional contact with that person. So how can we, here in Florida, think through how we can do that, knowing what we're dealing with in terms of capacity and finances and all those things? How can we proactively seek out to close that opportunity gap?
I think it's about starting small. I think we all want to attack the big fish and just organize the whole state. But start with your street. Start with your community. Start with your neighborhood. I believe his name is Fred yesterday, he mentioned a point, I think it was very valid. It's all about the message and the messenger, and that's 100% true. And having a relationship, being able to say, I stay down the street from you, and I really want you to be involved in this process. That really resonates with people. And statistics show that. Someone is way more likely to get out to vote in a face-to-face conversation with someone they actually have a relationship or some connection with. So starting small. Secondly, we gotta be organized. We have to be organized. Like you mentioned, just registering is not enough. We have to ensure that we're tracking these people, using the systems and the databases that we have, like MAN, to follow up with these people in the future. So not only did I register you to vote, but I'm also inviting you to our town hall, where we're going to be speaking to our city council candidates about the issues that impact our communities. So just organizing, staying organized, ensuring that we're not just touching people one time, ensuring that we're following up with folks and doing our duty. I think that's the biggest thing we can do.
Now, Representative Driscoll, from the legislative standpoint, what has, and I think you mentioned judiciary and a couple of other committees, you went through them kind of quick for me, but I know transportation and judiciary are part of that. What measures can you share with the group that may be, or pieces of legislation that may be forthcoming to help protect the vote here in Florida?
Oh boy.
I know, there's a lot of issues.
It's tough. No, it's not even that. It's just because we have had a Republican-held legislature for over 20 years. And they have been systematically attacking our right to vote. So I have a colleague over in Orange County, Geraldine Thompson, who used to be a senator and now she's back as a representative, who worked all session long on a comprehensive voting reform, election reform package. I mean, it was wonderful, and it was not even particularly controversial or left-leaning, just common sense reform to make sure that people can exercise their right to vote. And what we saw from our colleagues across the aisle was that they co-opted her legislation, watered it down to the point where it was practically ineffective, and then to add insult to injury, added on the Amendment 4 legislation that is further restricting the right to vote. So we have it's a really long road and a tough road to hoe, because we even tried that this session. And it's not to say that we can't try it again next session. It's just that I don't think until we have more Democrats or closer numbers in the legislature that we can actually see true comprehensive reform. But I think that even without that reform, to your point about registering and engaging voters, and to the point that Jordan was making about the numbers in our county, we can still win these elections in spite of. It's going to take elbow grease, it's going to take good old-fashioned hard work, but this is the landscape that we have, it's the cards that we've been dealt, so how are we going to overcome those obstacles? We can do so with action.
You actually bring up an interesting point around Amendment 4. So that is something, I mean, we know that is a modern day poll tax. Like, we see, it's clear, it's evident, and I think the feeling right now across the country is that we're just not doing enough, like Democrats are not doing enough to go to bat for the American people. It's like, this is against the law. Like, a poll tax is against the law. How are we Like, is there anyone in the legislature who is like challenging that and calling that out as a poll tax? Like a split up, straight up, this is a poll tax.
Oh, absolutely. We went to war on that. We went to war on that in every committee. Every time it came up on the floor, I was proud to help lead debate in that, along with some of my other colleagues. And we pushed as hard as we could. I think it would take a challenge in court, maybe to try to overturn that, but there is case law in some other parts of the country that says that it's actually legal to do this, to require the completion of the satisfaction of financial obligations in your sentence. So if you were ordered to restitution, that is okay, according to some courts in this country, to require that before you vote. But I think we can overcome it. We just have to overcome it with action. Is it fair? No. I mean, it's completely against what the voters voted for. We had more people vote in favor of Amendment 4, restoring felons or returning citizens' right to vote, than we had vote for any other candidate on the ballot. I don't know how it could be more crystal clear than that.
Okay, so, Ms. Chloe, you have a wealth of experience here. You've seen it, a little bit of it all. And can you share with this group some forms of encouragement for the times that we're currently in and like what we're facing? Because we're facing a lot, like as not just as the Florida Democratic Party, but as a national Democratic Party. The stress and the angst that people feel is real. So can you share like some of the things that you've seen and how people have just kind of persevered past those points?
Thank you. I guess we live long enough to some of us remember not being able to vote. Come on. Anybody else besides me remember that? Oh, come on. I'm glad to be here. And that's one thing we have to tell our young folks. We have to tell them that story. I was so privileged when I worked with Congresswoman Castro. She took me to the Selma March and to hear Congressman John Lewis stand on that bus, and he was standing, I was sitting there, he's standing there. Tell that story, the sacrifice he made. And he's still making that sacrifice. We come some ways, but we have not arrived. So I appreciate young Jordan as she talked about we need to educate. What I hear with our young people, they don't understand or appreciate the vote. So we got to go back and start teaching our young people. I know they're going to register them in high schools, but they're really teaching them to know that I hear from a lot of times, I'm going to use the Senate with Bill Nelson. He's not coming to our community. I don't see him. And I'm going, where do you elect him to do? And they don't know that he's in Washington, D.C. And if he's not sitting in that seat, we don't get our voice heard. So affordable health care, when President Obama needed somebody, he needed Senator Bill Nelson to be in D.C. to vote for us, Congresswoman Kathy Castro, Charlie Crist, because there's very few Democrats in this area. So that's what we got to tell them, how much we lose. We lose. But yet it's still, I'm encouraged because we're still here fighting, and when we can elect young folks like Jordan over there, I'll be ready to cry, y'all. Y'all just don't know. Because the Bible talks about Habakkuk. The old has the vision, but bring the young, and they will run with it. Come on, y'all. See, I write the vision. I tell you all these old stories and what needs to be done, but I can't run like Jordan, okay? So we got to go and get these young folks and encourage them and put them in position of authority. And then we know we left a legacy when our time is over, okay? All right, thank you, y'all.
That was so great, and that was so needed. I think sometimes we focus on the negative so much, we need to be assured of this is not new. We've been here before, and there's so much more that we can do by just being where we are and paying homage to where we've been and using those as tools to propel us forward. So really, really grateful for that. I think you brought up some really interesting points around young people and young people in the classroom and how we're engaging them. One of the things that we found, utilizing 2017 and 18 as examples, that young people were really, they had chosen to disengage at 16 because no one was speaking to the issues. And they weren't speaking to the issues in a way that resonated with them. They are not party voters, they're not people voters, they are issue voters. So I think, and that's why we've also adopted this model with Seat at the Table, to start talking to people about issues. Because it's not enough to be excited about a candidate. In our race, you got too many to choose from. And we want you to love everybody, fall in love with as many people as you want, but fall in line when it comes time to vote in November. So, you know, that's just the motto, okay? Fall in love, but then fall in line. And I think we just have to get serious about that. Look, there is no perfect person, and we cannot look to people, to one person, to represent us all in the way that we want them to, unless we are willing to hold them accountable. So we have some personal accountability to do with that. But I want to talk to Jordan, actually, a little bit about, actually everybody, a little bit about how we can get younger people involved across the spectrum. So you're, like for instance, with you, Katarina, your business is business, right? There are so many young people who are choosing not to go into the regular workforce. I want you to be thinking about this before I go to Jordan. Like, so many young people are thinking about how they're creating jobs, how they're creating opportunities and creating wealth in a way that we hadn't been able to do outside of home ownership in our community for quite a long time. I want you to think about how we can use the chamber as a tool to, one, not only engage them around starting businesses, but also what that business involvement looks like from a civic engagement point of view, and then consequently down the line. Okay, so Jordan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I'm happy you brought up a very valid point. So as I mentioned, I worked for Next Gen America in 2018 during the midterm election. I was the data manager for the state. And we were the largest youth program the state of Florida had ever seen, with about $3 million put into the state to supply the Get Out to Vote efforts of millennials. We had presence across 40 different campuses throughout the state, and something we saw is young people connect on the issues. The top 3 issues that we saw young people caring most about, so we had these cards that folks filled out and retain their information, ensure to reach back out to them and invite them out, of course, to the elections, ensure they have the information they need, but also survey what issues are most important to them. And the top 3 issues we saw across the state were affordable health care, racial justice and equality, and college tuition, surprisingly. So, yes, college tuition is real.
It's a real thing, because tuition turns into debt is a whole situation. So,
and that's what we saw. To take a step back a little bit, though, especially talking about having a seat at the table. When I first came on board, and I saw the list of colleges that we were participating on at the forefront, there were no HBCUs. So I talked with my state director, about that, and asked if I could do some outreach at the HBCUs across the state. I'm from Daytona Beach. There was no problem going back home to Cookman. And I didn't even mind going up to Tallahassee to go do some outreach at FAMU. But it's about ensuring that you reach back. I think that's the biggest thing, and I wanted to ensure to touch on that. When you have a seat at the table, providing more seats, making room, like you mentioned, that's so important. We're paying students $15 an hour, and I know many students at Cookman at these HBCUs that could take advantage of that. So that was huge for me. Just understanding that it's not just about yourself and your position, but ensuring that other folks have opportunities as well to succeed. So connecting with the young people, I think it's about empowering them, not belittling them. That's huge. To say that someone impact is measured by their age in life is extremely ignorant and presumptuous. My age does not define what I can do or my impact in my area. And I think it's all about empowering individuals and understanding the power that they have to really turn into action.
Thank you.
So I absolutely agree with everything you said. It's interesting, in the state of Georgia, we were facing legislation this year that if you were behind on your student loans, that they would revoke your state license. Meaning you couldn't practice nursing, you couldn't be a barber or hair or a real estate agent. Any license that had to be cleared through the state of Georgia, they were going to take away your license. But getting young people mobilized around that issue to advocate, obviously there are a lot of people behind on their student loans. We're in more debt than we have been in generations way before us. And so giving young people an issue and telling them to lead around that, things that truly impact them, like student loans, that has been really impactful around the chamber. Getting them a seat at the table and making them, and putting them in leadership roles. Leadership roles where, you know, they're out at a lot of the young professional events, you know, other nonprofits, but chambers for young people feel like their grandfather's association. And so making sure that a chamber of commerce is not just for old white men 55 and up, that it is your chamber to do what you would like to do with it. A chamber belongs to the community, and they have to decide as community members, as business owners, and there are a lot of young people who are becoming entrepreneurs, who are creating social entrepreneur programs, and we have to get them at the table. We have to provide leadership roles for them. But I also wanted to say this. Is there anybody here from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce? Okay. So I will tell you, they are focusing on diversity and inclusion, but it's interesting why. Last November, after we had our vote for governor, and Stacey Abrams also was a rep in DeKalb County. So we are loaded with amazing, brilliant people in DeKalb County. I got on a call, which is why it's so important to have a seat at the table. I got on a call with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm originally from the state of Kansas. And for the first time in a very long time, we had a Democratic governor. But I heard someone say, and they listed all the companies that they represented, and then some very major companies from across the country. I sat on the phone very quiet, trying to listen to what all these men were going to say. And they said, well, the blue wave wasn't as ferocious as we thought. We won Georgia, but we lost Kansas. The very next day, I called the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and said, we are not going to renew our membership. Because if you're going to represent one party and not give us, and we're all paying into the dues of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And now, I haven't had a meeting with them in January. We want to be more inclusive. We want to be more diverse. We got to figure out how to get young people to the table. So, and obviously now that their president has abandoned them, but we've got to get young people to the table. We have to give them leadership roles. We have to encourage them to take those leadership roles. And we have to bring them on to meetings with us. Oftentimes, you know, they don't get that exposure. They get a chance to hear about it. But anytime I meet with Stacey Abrams or any of our other elected officials, I go to our young professionals group at the chamber and say, I have this meeting. Would you like to attend with me? They've got to get that exposure and not just theory of it. It has to be applied. They have to understand the conversations that we're having, legislation that's being proposed, and we've got to get them engaged to understand how legislation is created and how they fight against it when it's not representative of our communities or of what they believe.
As everybody's been saying, especially with our young people, working with Congresswoman Castor, we always got questions about student loans. And we see the impact locally. When they come out of college, they're heavily in debt. They get jobs, they can't afford, to pay all of it, and it's also impacting housing. You find a lot of young people say, I don't think I'm going to be able to afford a house right now. So again, find out what issues are important to them. I'm glad we have our sister here talking about the chamber. We have a chamber here in Tampa. One of the things that when I was on the board, and I'm very blessed to have Dr. I. Tribble, who was our first black chamber president, to sit to the table and mentor me. And when I was doing economic development in East Tampa, he brought the chamber on a bus and did a tour of East Tampa. You know, the who's who of Tampa had never been to East Tampa, never been to the hood. So we don't challenge them.
That's true.
It doesn't happen. So one of the things that she said too, we got to take our young people, put them in a merge. They have a group here. So, because what I'm finding out too, and I'm glad they brought it out in the paper and the Tampa Times, the Tampa Bay Hall of Fame, predominantly rich white men sitting there, and they doing the buddy system. Now, I got elected to that almost 15 years ago, and thank God I had Alex Sink and others. But I'm the only female, black female, in the whole history name in there and get to go every year. And now you're finding them saying we need more females. Because we're not CEOs all the time, we're not sitting on the boards of directors. So that's critical that we do that. Last statement is everybody is talking about affordable housing. Now, if you're not sitting to the table, you're on the menu. You know what I mean? Everybody definition of affordable housing is not the same. It's not the same. Downtown, they talk about affordable housing, but none of us can afford these apartments they build. Now, come on. And they're building them right here, right around us, right in our neighborhoods. And if we're not to the table to really advocate for low to moderate income, okay, housing, and to say to our city and county and whoever else, we're going to put more money into truly attainable housing. And I mean all of it, from single families to townhouses to apartments or whatever. And it's so critical that we also, if you're talking about election now, please put affordable or attainable housing on that agenda.
Thank you. And I was really glad to hear, Jordan, that you said that criminal justice or racial justice was really important to young people, because I think that is a narrative and a policy area where Democrats should be able to occupy the field and really claim that narrative. So some of the things that we worked on last session, one of the things I was really proud to work on was a repeal of mandatory direct file. Mandatory direct file. Some of y'all know what that is. I had to be educated on it, where prosecutors automatically have to transfer juveniles to adult court for certain crimes. There's no discretion there. So I worked with another representative on a repeal of that. We got it passed unanimously through 3 committees in the House, and then it got incorporated into a criminal justice reform package that's awaiting action by Governor DeSantis, and we really hope that he will sign it. It was a really popular thing to do. Other things that we're trying to do is raise the threshold for felony theft. Right now in Florida, the threshold is like $300 or $350. That's ridiculous. If somebody were to steal my cell phone, does that make sense for them to be labeled as a felon for the rest of their lives? Florida has one of the lowest ones in the state. And, you know, I mentioned criminal justice because it's oftentimes intertwined with racial justice. So I think that that's an opportunity. If that's something that young people care about, criminal justice reform particularly is having a moment right now in the country and in the state, and I think we should do all we can to occupy the field.
Okay. So now I know we're getting close to time, so I'm going to do 2 things. So the last question is going to be about 2020 and how Black women reshape and take 2020 by the bullhorns. That was for you, Jordan. I want you to also, before we go to questions and answers, kind of give your call to action for the room. So I'm actually going to start. I know, right? That's a hard one. So I went on the call to action. I'll give you time to think about it. You took the mic. You started this conversation.
Because Jordan had to start last time, so I don't mind starting this time.
Okay.
Give her a break. So 2020, I'm excited. I don't know about y'all, but I am fired up. We have a deep bench of candidates. They are all fantastic. They are wonderful at the national level. We need to keep an eye out in our communities for candidates at the local level, because we know that local races matter and sometimes impact our daily lives even more than the national level in some ways.
That's right.
But my call to action in 2020 would be this. We have got to stop the dim on dim violence. Look, let me tell you, we can fight in this room, we can fight in any room when it's just us, but when we walk out them doors, y'all, we need to be united. I can't top that. I think I should quit while I'm ahead. Thank you so much.
brag about her. You see this young lady sitting here, and she won that election. Now, it wasn't predicted that she was supposed to win. She was against a Senate representative. And I'm going to encourage y'all, because she brought me out. I told her after I retired from Congresswoman Cassidy, I wasn't helping nobody. I was sick of the election every 2 years. That's how it worked. I know it's working. I ain't doing it. But I'm going to encourage y'all, when you find a good candidate like her, I want you to get up and go to work, whatever it takes. Knocking on doors, calling your friends, having fundraising, because it takes money, money, money. Do you hear me? I'm dead serious. We got to put the right person in the right position.
That's right.
That will represent us.
Yeah.
Do y'all hear me? Now this is from the old lady, all right?
Thank you, Ms. So I would say 2020 obviously is extremely important, but I want you all to know that every issue that we talk about, healthcare, education, affordable housing, workforce, it's a business issue. And most of the time we don't think that they are, but they are, and we don't put the two together. But if people don't have access to affordable healthcare, access to great education, affordable housing, and workforce, where are the companies that we're recruiting to our cities, to our counties? Where do they get the people that work for them? They can't be a productive business if their people are always sick or can't get transportation to their companies. So every issue that we talk about is a business issue. So make sure, even if you're not engaged in your chamber, that you ask, what is their legislative agenda? And does it align with the things that you need in your community? Do you need more transportation? Do you need more affordable housing? It should align with, that should align with their legislative agenda. If it does not, that chamber doesn't represent you in the way that it should, and then you need to make sure that whether it's Florida Power or maybe a company that you work for, that you go and say, we need to be a part of the chamber, here's how much the membership costs, we want a seat on the board. And then also programming. What type of programming does your chamber offer? So are we talking about education? Are we doing bus tours? Are we doing bus tours through our communities that are the most blighted with the most need? If not, let your chamber know, listen, I see that you don't have this program on your annual program docket. However, I've got a community of volunteers. We'd like to create a program and have a chamber host us. Make the chamber do what you needed to do to support you. Otherwise, go out and start your own chamber. We hate that. We don't like that. So go out and make sure that the chamber that's been your community for years represents you. And again, every issue is a business issue, regardless if they decide that they want to accept that or not. Every issue is a business issue.
If I had to have a call to action for this next election, I think it's taking advantage of our candidates' candidacy and holding them accountable to the issues that we care about when they're running, and then keeping them accountable when they're elected. We have to turn out. We have to turn out. And I think it's all about our grassroots organizing. I'm a huge grassroots person. That's what I love about my party. It's about having those conversations with all of your network. My friends hate when I call them around election time. They really do. They already know. Did you vote yet? No? When are you going? What's your plan to vote? You have to keep your networks and your people accountable. It's so important. And I think it's so much at stake in 2020. It's no longer about the opportunity. It's about political survival at this point. And we can go on a hinge on that. I mean, literal survival of our earth, of our nation, of our state. And we're in the Bay here, so we definitely have to keep that in mind. So it's about political survival, and it's about turning out the vote for me. And it's about ensuring that we have that seat at the table, and if they don't provide it, we make room.
Amen. All right. So any questions from the audience? Anybody? One person? Yes, ma'am, come on up. You. Table 58.
Okay, this goes back to, it's a question.
Could you also state your name, please? I'm sorry.
I'm Florence Shelton Clark, and I'm with Manatee County. going back to you, Chamber of Commerce, I moved from Atlanta, and I was a business owner there. And you mentioned the funding for minorities. When I was there, and I'm a minority, I was a minority, a female African American, needed funding, and I was unable to get any type of funding, even though I was told that, SBA was going to assist me in getting some type of funding. And I'm saying this now because we're trying to get people involved in businesses and young people involved. And if that happened to me back then, I just don't want it to happen to, continue to happen. But I couldn't get any type, SBA, they sent me to SBA and they go, you're a prime candidate, you should be able to get, funds or capital or whatever. Nothing. I had to use all of my money in order to even start my business.
Yeah, and most of the time we put ourselves in debt just to start a business. Thank you. And so that's why it's so important that we advocate to our congressional leaders that we need those dollars coming from, and they're grant block funding dollars, right? So it's coming from the Treasury. That's why it's so important when Trump was saying they're going to take those dollars away. We need those dollars to go to CDFIs because CDFIs are very different than the SBA. CDFIs are community development financial institutions right in our local communities that say if there's one, they're focused on workforce. So they've got to create entrepreneurs to create other jobs. And there's so many other types of available funding. If you were to go into a particular area in your county or city, being able to get some tax credits to hire people. So really we've got to focus on CDFIs, and we have to understand who those CDFIs are. And oftentimes we don't know. The other thing is making sure that you, again, either go to your chamber or another business organization in your county or city to say, who are my CDFIs, how much are they being funded, and how much are they actually putting back into the community? A lot of times those dollars are backed by a municipality that is getting those Treasury dollars. And so it's really about, oftentimes we don't share the information. So when I came to my chamber, we had a completely different mission. Now our mission is giving people access to information, people, and opportunities. Because if you don't have access to those things, then you're really just treading water.
And I didn't know about it because I was in Duluth, where...
You were in Gwinnett County, yes.
But I made it and I did it, but, I ended up closing it, but that was a challenge.
I'm going to go to table 56. I saw you first. That's black shirt, and then core shirt, and then I'm coming back to 58.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be brief. I went to the...
Name?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was trying to be brief.
It's okay. But who you are is important to the conversation, so.
My name is Elise Shelton. I'm with Volusia County Democratic Black Caucus. I went to the protest rally on Wednesday in Orlando, and I have to say that my biggest frustration was with the black people in that area at the time. What I figured out is that they use the temp agent.
On our side or their side?
They were on their side.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason why they were on their side is because they used the temp agency to hire minorities to sell their MAGA wear at this event in Orlando. And so it was more black people sitting around selling MAGA stuff than white people. And so me, being me, I confronted every single one. Well, at least four, the first four, let's put it that way. Then I figured out what was going on. But the first boy that I approached, and I say boy because once I confronted him and talked to him, I found out he was 15. Oh, ouch. And so I went up to, the way I confronted them is I'm like, look, I know you gotta work. I know you gotta make your money. But please tell me you at least vote the right way. And he told me he was 15. Okay, that was the first guy. The second guy, well, of course I told him he needed to get registered and get ready. But the second guy told me he was a felon and on probation, so he couldn't vote. And then the third guy, the last two, told me that they just don't vote. Okay, and so we had a little heated conversation.
Yeah.
But the last guy, he said, well, I have my opinion and you have yours. I said, well, your opinion don't count because you don't vote. So that was that discussion. And then there was another more major incident with another black person that was wearing one of those yellow direct traffic people vests that said Trump 2020 on the back. And I know he was working. He was working, but he was really ugly. And he cursed me and everything, and I had to repent over that one. But I'm just sharing this because of the experience. Of course, I got to meet some of the Proud Boys, but the experience to me just told me that we need to educate our people and get them out there. Because he kept saying, that man ain't done nothing for you. I'm like, did he do something for you? I don't understand. And I was so frustrated, I tell you, I wanted to bring some
But I think that underscores a greater issue, though. It's less about them working, it's the fact that we lack opportunities for them to have options. So, that to me drills down on a much larger issue when you just had the passing of Amendment 4, but then you had the dilution of Amendment 4 for the person who was the ex-felon. Then you have the child abuse of the child who was 15 years old out working because he has to figure out how to close that opportunity, that wealth gap in their community. So we have a greater issue. It's less about the rally, but it was about the conversations you had and how we need to be thinking about how we provide solutions to those people. So I thank you for your comments on that. Ma'am? Yes, ma'am. I'm in 56.
I'm Joyce Cusack. I'm one of those persons that were a part of the Florida legislature in 2000, when there were 64 freshmen in the House, 24 members of the Black Conference of Black State Legislators. I was the leader pro tem in the Florida House. All right. I want you to know that we have done many great things, but we have so much more to do. I'm concerned about the fact that as black folk, we don't unite ourselves. And we don't, even in the legislature, now you have folk that are members when there's key issues that impact the people we represent, we fall off and we split our vote. So if you have 24 members and you have even 2 of them that split off on key issues that impact us, that's a problem. That's a problem for me because I think that there are some things like the stand your ground issue. I was in the legislature when that passed. But we stood strong on that issue as a party and as black folk. And I said to them in the Senate, we had folk that looked like us that voted for that bill, the stand your ground issue. Check the record, it shows that. Those folks are still in the process in Congress even today. So I want you to know that you have to be conscious and you have to be understand that you don't just represent yourself when you're in these high positions. It's a vote that sent you there that you represent. And so if you have to get elected and you take a vote because that's helped me get elected, well, hell, you have to be there anyway. If you have to take a vote to get elected, you do the right thing. And your people will appreciate that. And I believe that as a legislator, you are in a powerful position to change policy. Sometimes you can't get the whole job done, but you have an opportunity to bite off a piece of that pie. Right. Can't always get the whole pie. So we have to be patient and understand that you can't get it all at one time. You gotta take it in pieces. And so I say to you to be encouraged, but don't fall down. Because there are old folk like me who will fall in my arms because I've been on the trail too long. You see. So just remember that you don't represent only you represent the youth, and I want you to be successful. That's why I'm still trying to do some things, because it's important that I go down as a winner in my people. I go down as a winner in my people. So you work together, unite yourself, and have the right spirit as to why you're doing what you do. And then we will see a difference in the chamber. When you go to the chamber, sometimes, when I went to the county council as the at-large member, I was the only one there. But I don't mean because I break bread with you, we are the same. Because we don't. Everybody who say they're with you, not with you.
That's right.
And so that's all I want to tell you is that we're with you 100%. And we want you to know that you can grow from our wisdom.
Well, we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Last question at table 58, and then we're going to go back to our panel so that they can tell folks how to connect with them outside of this forum.
Yes, Kevin Chambers, President of the South Day Democratic Black Caucus. I wanted to go back to her incident at a Republican rally because what we saw in the last election statewide, we saw an interesting number amongst African Americans that voted for Republican governor. And I think that this is a question that we have to ask ourselves, like, why is this happening? Well, if you ever find someone who, you might not have been able to tell their name, but they admit to you that, yeah, I voted for the Republican. One of the answers that I found is that because he gave me a job, because that's the guy who hired XYZ or helped get jobs to all these people in our community. I'm glad the chamber is here because the Democratic Party is not having the economic development conversation enough. And economic development is one of our poverty levels, our income levels in the black community. It's one of the underlying causes of many of our other issues that we have. And so what ends up happening is that we focus on these branch issues and we're not going to the root problem. Our health issues, our education issues, our issues with the criminal justice system. All of that can be traced back to our economic, our socioeconomic status. And we have to begin to make the Democratic Party have that conversation. You look at, you mentioned something about the Chamber of Commerce and the legislative agenda. It's very interesting in the state of Florida. Many of our Democratic legislators, they don't rank well on that legislative report card for the Chamber of Commerce here in Florida. So a conversation is not being had, one. Secondly, when we are having a conversation, Democrats are losing that battle. We're not able to articulate how am I going to feed you or give you a job where you can feed and house yourselves. We're not able to articulate that in the Democratic Party. So it's a hard question that we have to ask. But I think that was reflected in some of the people that you have, because we have to ask ourselves, if a man is looking to feed his family, or a woman looking to feed her family.
Thank you for your correction.
and someone helped them get a job that now helps them feed and sustain their family. I mean, don't they deserve to vote for that person? So why is that person not us? We should be that person. Thank you.
I thank you for that. So I'm actually going to challenge folks in this room, and I do this everywhere I go, because I believe it's about changing the narrative. Hey, Grace. It's about changing the narrative around this. Everyone in this room is a Democrat, right or wrong? Everyone in this room associates themselves with the Democratic Party, right or wrong?
Yes.
So when you say Democratic Party, you are talking about yourself. So I want us to own that, because no one institution has a better interest in line for us than we do for ourselves. And so we have to keep that in the forefront of our minds when we have these conversations. I think we have to also be okay with challenging folks who associate themselves with our party when it comes down to issues that matter most to us. And that goes from the local, state, and federal levels. I know there are so many other questions that are out here on the floor, but we are wrapped and scrapped for time. I want to go back to my panel and allow them to give you all some marching orders in terms of how you can connect with them once we wrap up this conversation, and then I'll close out with the final thing from the National Party.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. Can we give a hand to our moderator? Hasn't she been fabulous? She's been great. And thank you all for your questions and for your engagement and the positive energy. Just once again, I'm Ventress Driscoll, State Representative, District 63. Would love to stay connected with any and all of you, and especially those of you who are thinking about running for office. I know we have some candidates in this room, and I'm always happy to share that experience with you, what it's like and what I learned. As Chloe alluded to, I had a tough race. Unseated a Republican incumbent who had been in and out of that seat for 10 years and had been on city council as well for 8. So I know about tough races, and I know about dealing with pay-to-play kind of politics and nonsense where they had hired black folk to work at the polls and basically mislead people into thinking that my opponent was a Democrat and that he was a black man. It was crazy, y'all. It was real crazy. It was crazy. Chloe saw it. She knows. But in any event, please connect. I'm on social media across every platform. Ventress4FL. That's FENTRICE. Spell it out, FORFL. In fact, I think there's an ad from me in the program booklet, so you can find all my social media there. But would love to stay connected and just wish you all the best for the rest of an enjoyable day. I got to scoot over and do another engagement, but hopefully I'll get to see y'all later tonight. So thank you.
It was a privilege to be here, and like she said, to share wisdom, because we've been there on the battlefield, and we're still on the field. Want to make sure everybody know that. Thank you, young man. It is about economic development. It's about economic development, whatever we do. And y'all heard that I was a founder of the CDC of Tampa here doing economic development. So whatever you do, whatever conversation, be it housing, small business, or whatever, please sit to the table, okay? Because until we move people out of poverty, and they can find good jobs, and they can buy a house, and they can do whatever else they can, please, all of us Democrats better sit to the table when those decisions are being made. Thank you. And I think I have some cards if you want my information. And my son, and I want to say this, my son, Ivy League too, got his master's, left healthcare to run the CDC. So as we start our businesses, let's bring our next generation with us. Amen. And put them in the right positions. Amen. So I'm glad to have my son now running the CDC. 25 people hired, has brought over $50 million to East Tampa, okay? And it can be done, but we got to sit to the table.
So, thank you. And thank you for that comment around economic development. That is honestly where it all starts. Economic development happens to us sometimes and not for us. That's why we have to have a seat at the table. Please be aware that when you go to a chamber, there are campaign dollars to be contributed to the people that you want to see win. You just got to go out and ask for it. Companies oftentimes give to all candidates, but we're not out there lobbying for those dollars within those chamber walls. And then for small businesses or people that want to start businesses, that's one of the ways for us to get ourselves out of poverty and create more jobs in our communities. But we also need to make sure that our businesses are legitimized. If they're not legitimized, then it doesn't matter the legislation, because the legislation doesn't work for us, because we're not recognized as legitimized businesses. So it really starts there. Again, please engage your chamber and really lobby them to do what's best for your communities. Oh, and you can reach me at Cat Consults on Twitter, and then I'm also on social media.
Thank you all. It's an honor to be up here with so many intelligent women, with so much wisdom, and absolutely you have to learn from folks that have come before you. I 100% agree. The only point I want to make very, very quickly is we have to stop looking at disenfranchised and disengaged people and getting frustrated and see it as an opportunity. I think it's very easy for us to get upset when we hear someone say, oh, I don't vote, it's no point, X, Y, and Z. But instead we have to look at those as opportunities to gain a member of our party, a member in the voting process. And that's a lot of the issue that we have as Black people. People don't feel empowered. And when we get frustrated and say, well, that's silly, X, Y, and Z, that's disempowering them even more. So let's take the opportunity to really engage on them on the issues, because it's an issue they care about. It's just about pulling it out. All right, that's the only point I wanted to make around that.
Wow. Go ahead. I'm about to close out. Okay, great. So give our panel a marvelous round of applause. Madam President, thank you so much for your leadership. I really am full. Thank you so much. important. You all don't understand how magnanimous this moment is. And it is magnanimous because this assures that everything that we're trying to pull together, work together, I feel comfort in knowing that there are folks on the ground who are toiling away at the soil to make sure that in 2020 we are victorious, not because of 1600, but because of every municipal race we would have won, because of every legislative race we would have won. And when we, in 2012, is that my phone? Oh no, that's my phone. In 2012, I believe, we turned over, when Barack Obama left office, we turned over 1,000 federal judicial nominations to this president. Make it plain, over 1,000 lifetime appointments. So folks focus on 1,600 and what goes on over at the Supreme Court nationally, but we have races that we have to focus on here. With the census come on our heels, it is here. It's not coming next year, it is already here. It has been here for at least 5 years. The pre-survey, all that stuff, the fact that they took $200 million from the undercount program, who does that impact? Communities of color, black and brown, men and children. And if we aren't thinking strategically about how we are deploying all of our mechanisms from our churches, I mean that seriously, from our legislative organizations, NBCSL, Nobel Women, NCSL, figuring out where our folks are is important because that's going to impact the money, appropriations, representation, all of those things that we talk about. When you talk about economic development, it starts with being counted. You can't count if you can't count. Okay? That's just it. That's just it. And we have to demystify the census, and we have to get real creative. We talked about how we're looking to engage young people in the process, in the civic engagement process. The census is a part of civic engagement. Young people are more savvy than any other person in this room, and I consider myself young, but people younger than me know more than I do about how to use the phone, how to use the internet to actually close a lot of these gaps. There are opportunities to engage folks where they are, aligning with their interests, and make real impact happen, and we just have to get creative about how we do that. We have to start real young. I'm not talking about high school, I'm talking about middle school with this stuff. And it has to be intentional. Use your table, your dinner table, the living room table. Use the picnic table, the barbecue table to talk to our families and our friends about this work. It can't just be one or two of us. It can't just be one or two of us with a title trying to get millions of people engaged in the process. The opportunity gap here in Florida is in the millions of people. You represent millions of people in this room. You have to take advantage of that opportunity. So I want to challenge you to connect with us at the National Party. At the Democrats. It's real simple on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. But if you want to connect with me personally, you can do that on Twitter at WJS Clanton. And then also email me. I run Seat at the Table and a whole lot of other stuff. But mainly Seat at the Table because you know why? I had a choice to give this up. I decided not to. There is not one person more qualified to go to bat for black women than me in that building. So that will be me. So I want to challenge you to connect with us. We have an event happening next week in Miami. I know y'all heard all about the Democratic debates. Host watch parties in your communities. It's not all gonna happen at the Art Center. It's not. It's gonna happen in your living room. It's gonna happen in your barbershop or in your restaurant or in your church. We need you to host those parties. You know why? Because you are the biggest influencer we have for your zip code. It's just the truth. I could come down there, nobody know me. But they know Jordan. They know Representative Driscoll. They know, everybody knows Miss Chloe. So, I think we have to understand what power is and what our power is and claim that and walk in that light. So I want to say thank you so much for hosting me in the lovely Tampa. And this will be my last visit, so bye.
let's give these ladies a hand again. I am so proud. I just want to, I'm like Fingers. Miss Chloe is the person that I call when I need advice, so I'm so excited for her to be here. And this young girl who's leading Hillsborough County Democratic Black Caucus. Did y'all hear her when she said she was 24?
Yes.
I just want to make sure. Did she sound 24 when she was talking? No. All right. So that's the kind of thing that we need to see and understand.
Actually, yes, she did sound 24. That is what a 24-year-old sounds like.
So let me correct what I stated. Does she sound like what people perceive 24-year-olds as? That's what we need to do. We got to change the perception, and it starts with us. We're going to allow, actually to just stay here for a moment, we're going to allow our DNC member, Alma Gonzalez, to come up for a moment. We're going to let her make a statement, and then we're going to come back with some instructions on where we move forward for the rest of the day, how we're going to move, what the agenda looks like, and what the next steps. We're going to leave this room and go to the next room, but Alma, if you will come up, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You look amazing. Honor and blessings to you. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. You know how families are, right? We love each other so very much, but we don't always agree. And as one of the top officers at the Florida Democratic Party have been asked to address you about an issue. A candidate for the Democratic Black Caucus office was suspended and has requested that the Florida Democratic Party postpone today's election. The Florida Democratic Party is asking the caucus to grant that request. President Hudson has had a conversation with a number of you who have inquired about it, and it's been decided, I think, to grant that request because it's important for the good of the organization not to have this pall over us. And we need to be unified today going forward. You're doing some incredible work. You're very unified. I'm so proud to be part of this family, to be called one of your sisters. And I wanted to make sure that you were aware of this issue, the request that's been made of the party, our conversation with President Hudson, and how that will affect your elections today. Don't be discouraged. Feel the love of all your brothers and sisters here today. Thank you.